We open on an 11-year-old Barry Allen. His mom is preparing him for school, where he will participate in the spelling bee. We learn that Barry's parents are in the middle of a divorce. This scared him, but his mother always reassured him that everything would be okay. As Barry was leaving, he noticed his parents getting in a heated argument. Barry wins the spelling bee with the word catharsis, and is given a big trophy that he can't wait to show his parents. But when he arrives back home, he sees something that will change his world forever. The police were at his house, shoving his dad in the back of a squad car. Barry was incredibly scared and confused, but his dad yelled at him to not go inside and that everything would be okay. Barry ran inside and saw his mother's body, covered in blood, lying dead on his living room floor. He fell to the floor and began to cry. He never even got to show her his trophy. That's when an officer walked in, a man named FRYE. The sight of Barry broke his heart. DARRYL took Barry in and vowed to take care of him to the best of his ability. Barry also made a vow that day. He knew his father didn't do this, and he became a forensic scientist and dedicated the rest of his life to proving his father's innocence. In present day, we see Barry working his job as a CSI, investigating the theft of a museum's stolen jewel or something. Although his head isn't really in the game, and his partner, August Hart, is really the one doing all the work. Officer FRYE, Barry's adoptive father, acknowledges this and tells Barry that he's been very distracted lately, working on the closed case of his mother's murder. Barry tells him that his dad has been in prison for the past 21 years and he can't just let him sit there for the rest of his life. CHYRE, Officer FRYE's assistant, agrees with him and tells Barry that he better shape up. Then Iris West, a reporter for the Central City Citizen, arrives and interviews all of them. She eventually gets to Barry, who she takes an immediate liking towards, and she gives him her number so that they can remain in contact about the case. After getting off from work, Barry heads to his local bar where he meets up with his best friend, MIKEY. MIKEY is a sort of hotshot playboy who doesn't like to do any work or put in any effort towards anything, so in a way, he's kind of like the opposite of Barry. After having a conversation about how Barry is getting too stressed over things, MIKEY points out that Jessica CRUZ, a woman who Barry has eyes for, is sitting 4 seats down from them, and this is the perfect chance for Barry to make a move. He decides to go along with this, and as soon as he walks over to talk to her, he trips over his own feet and eats it. Too embarrassed, he decides to go back to sit with MIKEY. Frustrated, Barry says that he has stuff like this always happen to him, and he feels like someone's constantly pushing him around. MIKEY tells him he just needs more confidence in himself, and once he gets that confidence, he'll have women lining up at the door. That night, Barry is watching the news in his apartment, and he hears about a very, very strange lightning storm going on, with really weird-looking horizontal lightning showing up throughout the clouds. He also hears the story about a little boy's mother who was killed, and hearing about this makes him decide to go back to his lab and do some more work on his mother's case. As he's going to his lab, Barry experiences the storm first person, and it's even crazier than he could have imagined. He even swears that he sees a guy up in the clouds. At his lab, Barry goes over all the evidence for about the billionth time and still finds nothing new. Meanwhile, the storm has gotten so severe that the city has told everyone to stay in their homes. Barry goes over everything again and again and again, until all of a sudden a giant burst of lightning crashes through his glass window, hits him, and he falls back, crashing into a bunch of chemicals. Barry is on the brink of death, but luckily FRYE arrives just in time and takes him to the hospital. The doctors are just barely able to keep him alive. After hearing about what happened, both Mikey and August rush into the hospital to check and see if Barry's okay. The three of them sit there for hours and hours, not wanting to leave Barry, and eventually, Barry sits up with a gasp. All the doctors rush in, amazed at how he's miraculously alive, and Barry says he feels like nothing even happened to him. He's forced to stay for a while to run some tests, but eventually he's released from the hospital. The next day, Barry gets a call from Iris, and instead of talking about the case, she asks how he's doing since she heard about what happened to him. Barry says he feels absolutely fine, and Iris asks him to go out for coffee, which he accepts. During their date, if that's what you want to call it, Iris tells Barry that she found some new evidence pointing towards the jewel thief, and that he should meet her by the docks tomorrow night. Before they leave, Iris spills her coffee and Barry goes into full super speed mode. He's incredibly freaked out by the whole thing, and Iris asks him what's wrong. But since he's so freaked out, he doesn't respond and leaves the cafe without saying anything. Barry rushes out. He feels like he's in a fever dream, and he has no idea what to make of this. He immediately connects the dots and assumes that this has something to do with the lightning strike. Instead of going to DARRYL, Mikey, August, or a doctor, like anyone else would, Barry decides to handle this on his own. We learn that Barry is kind of a loner. He doesn't rely on anyone or trust people, and only counts on himself to fix all of his problems. Barry heads to his lab and grabs some equipment before going to a field to run some tests. Barry tries a bunch of different techniques to activate his speed like he did earlier, but nothing seems to work. He, tries running, he pinches himself, but a loud train horn ends up scaring him, which activates his speed and he starts running really fast. He is able to run a few laps around the field in only a couple seconds. When he stops, he expects his skin to be damaged, but to his surprise, he is completely fine, except for his clothes, which are all burned up. Barry is absolutely amazed, and not only because of his speed, but also because of the fact that he is completely unharmed by it. He decides that he still needs more equipment though, and he knows exactly where to get it. Garrison SLATE, the founder of Star Labs, is investigating the lightning storm, and his lab is filled with all kinds of tech that could be very useful to Barry. Instead of asking Garrison for help, Barry decides to break into Star Labs and steal the equipment for himself. To be fair though, Garrison is known as a seedy man, and nobody really trusts him. Barry arrives at Star Labs and he has no trouble sneaking past the guards using his super speed, but eventually he gets to Garrison's lab and figures out he has to put in a code to enter. He tries every single combination using his speed and eventually puts in 1056, which is the correct code, and he gets in. Barry notices a bunch of rare metals that he can put to use, and he's about to take them when all of a sudden a security guard walks in and tells him to put his hands in the air. Barry takes the metals and rushes out before the guard can see his face, but the guard is in awe and does not believe what he just saw. Barry arrives back at his apartment and he can't believe that he just broke the law. He tells himself it's fine because the guy's a dick, but he still feels ashamed. That's when Mikey walks in. Barry asks him what he's doing here, and Mikey says that he just wanted to see how he was doing after the accident, since he's been acting really weird lately. Barry quickly shuts him out and forces him to leave the apartment, which just makes Mikey more concerned for his friend. After Mikey leaves, Barry uses all the tech and metals to create a silver proto-suit that should protect him while he's using his super speed. When he's finished, Barry remembers his talk with Iris and heads to the docks to meet her, wearing his suit underneath his clothes just in case. At the docks, Barry apologizes to Iris for running out on her and says he was having a weird side effect from the lightning strike. Iris isn't mad, just confused. She changes the subject to the jewel thief and says that she knows who he really is, a man named Timothy Walker. Before Barry can ask how she knows, Timothy appears out of the shadows and says that he knew someone would find out eventually before firing a gun at the two of them. Barry subconsciously catches the bullet as it's about to hit Iris and tells her to run. They both run away, but after making sure Iris is safe, Barry suits up and goes back to confront Walker. Barry collides with Walker and knocks him out before he even knows it. The cops arrive and Barry quickly runs away from the scene. DARRYL and CHYRE get out of the car and detain Walker. DARRYL asks CHYRE if he saw what knocked him out. CHYRE says that he doesn't know, but whatever it is, he doesn't like it. We then see that Iris wasn't too far away and she was watching the whole thing. She wasn't able to see that it was Barry though. The next day, Barry has lunch with August. August tells him that Mikey told him what was going on, and he says that he's shutting too many people out and he needs to open up more. August asks Barry about the last time he talked to his dad, and Barry mentions that it's been over 2 years since he feels too ashamed and guilty to speak to him. But August eventually convinces him to visit his father. Meanwhile, Iris puts out a new article about her experience at the docks, letting Central City know about the speedster, and dubbing him the Silver Streak. Barry arrives at Iron Heights Penitentiary, incredibly nervous for his encounter with his father. Then Henry Allen walks in, with the biggest smile on his face. Barry immediately apologizes for both not seeing him and letting him rot in prison. Henry tells him that he knows it isn't his fault and to stop thinking like that. He's just happy to see him. Barry says that he's still working on his mother's case and he'll find a way to free him. But Henry tells Barry he's got to stop worrying about him and live his own life. He says that if he puts his resources in the right places, he can be someone else's hero. Garrison SLATE walks into his lab and sees that his tech is missing. The security guard says he tried to stop the perp, but somehow he had super speed. "Don't worry, boss. I'll find out who did this." "There's no need. I already know who it is. His name is Barry Allen, and I need you to bring him to me."